Welcome to Healthy Families, brought to you by Healthy Food Guide. I'm Jess Burvill.
And I'm Kathleen Alleaume. This podcast is your go-to source for credible health and nutrition advice from qualified experts to help you and your family thrive. So whether you're planning a baby, wondering what to feed your kids, or looking to live longer, we've got all the practical tips for every stage of life to guide you and your loved ones. Now, on today's show, we're putting the spotlight on how to feed your family healthy on a budget. A really practical episode, and what a timely one.
I know. I feel like every time I'm going into the supermarket at the moment, I walk out with a bill of, $100 for 5 items. It's crazy. And you hear a lot in the news about people finding it difficult to eat healthily on a budget. And that's really what we wanted to focus on today, was, giving you all some really practical, down-to-earth examples on how you can, continue to eat, feed your family healthily, but on a budget.
I know that feeling well too well. But today we're going to share some money-saving secrets to feed your family for under $200.
Kathleen, $200. You've got like 3 kids. Is that really doable?
No, well, let's just say, look, the stats do say that $200 is the average dollar spent for 4 people. So a family of 4 would reach $200, and that's the average spend. And today I just want to clarify that we are just talking about food items. So we're not putting in household items at all.
Because all that detergent, etc., is pretty expensive, right?
Absolutely. So let's just bring it down to food. Let's be fair. But look, I'll be completely honest with you, Jess. Of course I spend over $200, but this figure in mind does help me rein it back in. And this is what we're going to share today, some of the hacks to help you stick to that figure, whatever figure it may be, 200 or 300. What is it that's going to help you stick to that budget?
All right, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into this. So, like, Kathleen, what's your top tip? How do you keep to that budget of $200?
Look, I have to say it's planning. You have to plan. I don't know, people shudder, they roll their eyes every time I say this, but you have to have some kind of plan in mind. And if you don't, you go in there on a whim, and this is where the costs really add up, because you impulse buy. But with that plan off the back of that, you have to have that list. And that's the first thing I do. Once I step into that supermarket, that list will help me stick to it. And that's what's going to help you stick to that budget if you can.
Yeah, I think I'm actually the same. I like to go into the supermarket with a list, but I will admit that sometimes I do deviate a little from the list, particularly if I see something on special or an ingredient, maybe something wasn't available and I have to pivot a little bit. But having the list and thinking about in advance what you're actually going to cook for the week really does help to set that foundation for making sure that when you walk into the supermarket, you've got a plan and you don't walk out with things that you didn't mean to buy.
Yeah, because I know me, if I don't have that list and I'm hungry and I'm walking to that supermarket, I can guarantee you I'll walk out with something completely different. So it's about having that menu in place. And at Healthy Food Guide, we do talk about menu plans a lot. And it doesn't have to be tedious or a laborious task. It's maybe, for me, I have maybe 3 or 4 meals in my head for that week. And so that will be a balance of mixtures of carbohydrates and proteins. But it's really important before that meal plan or some kind of plan is done, is that you do that stock take in your kitchen, because there's no point in doubling up on things that you've got, because that's where, again, that's another money saving hack too. Like, why double up on items in your pantry that you've already got? So if you have that list, it really fine tunes and allows you to do that stock take. And
it also helps to cut down on food waste, because we talk about saving money, planning and buying affordable food, but a big part of it's also trying to minimize food waste, because when you're throwing food away, you're essentially throwing money away, aren't you? Not to mention that it's, not great for the environment. And I think we read a stat the other day saying that the average household in Australia is throwing away nearly $4,000 worth of food a year. I mean, that's insane. So I guess, our first tip would be that a little bit of planning goes a long way, can really help you save some money. So Kathleen, thinking about with the planning and deciding what you're actually going to cook, can you give us some ideas on some tips on actual meals that you might cook that are really good value for money and that your family enjoys and that you're not going to end up throwing out?
Look, I have to say, I have fussy eaters, and I'm sure this is another episode in its entirety. I mean, I have 3 children, and 2 of which are in primary and one's in high school. So very different palates. But one thing that and I'm not going to be a short order cook either. So I just refuse to cook different meals. I mean, that's a time waster in itself, let alone a money spender. So I often come up with theme nights. I think that's worked really well. We've got into the groove of that. So, for example, we'll have a Mexican night, no matter what night it is, pizza night, movie night, and then, one night will just be plain pasta and then it'll just be meat and 3 veg. So, I mean, we base it on themes. So, for example, for my Mexican, that could be 1 or 3 options. It might be a chili con carne that can be repurposed with rice, or it could be with tacos. I mean, in order to save money with a taco recipe, for example, it's just, trying to bulk out that mince and make that meal go further with some legumes or some kidney beans, for instance. So you might buy a kilo of mince meat, but you could stretch that further by adding in some legumes. So that, again, that might make out 3 meals, 1 for chili con carne, 1 for a taco meal, and 1 we could maybe put with something else in wraps or whatever it may be, burritos. So that's a Mexican theme, but repurposed in 3 different ways. That makes sense?
Yeah, so the family don't get bored of the same thing every week.
Oh, yeah, and my family get bored. And, I mean, the other night my son was just complaining, this again. I'm just, okay, this is when I know I have to think of some repertoires. But that's when I go to Healthy Food Guide, because they have really, really good ideas about, really budget-friendly meals that we can do, and just for ideas and inspirations as well.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of my ideas, I think, from social media, like a lot of people. So there might be a bit of scrolling during the week and I'll see a recipe from an influencer or something on Healthy Food Guide, and I'll decide I'm going to make that, and I'll go in and, buy all the ingredients for that. And then I guess the other part of my planning is actually a little bit less structured. So I might, go in with one recipe in mind and then make up some decisions based on what I see in the supermarket when I actually go in there to see what's on special and what's available.
Eggs are bad. Eggs are good. Cut carbs, boost carbs. Ugh, with so much conflicting information, what's truly healthy? Healthyfood.com cuts through the noise to deliver credible, science-backed nutrition advice from qualified dietitians to ensure you make the best decisions for your lifestyle. A subscription to Healthyfood.com gives you access to thousands of easy, delicious, healthy recipes, meal plans, and more. Visit Healthyfood.com to start your journey to better health today.
So maybe if we chat a little bit more about the actual shopping experience, like, where do we go? How do we save money when we're actually in the supermarket?
Well, for me, it's looking, look, I have that list. I think just for me, it's sticking to that list. If I stick to that list, I know the essentials that I need because I've done my stock take. Yes, if there are specials, I will look at it. But, for example, it might be, I don't know, cauliflower, for instance. I mean, this week cauliflower is on special. Yes, I like to make a cauliflower soup. So I might deviate a little bit, but, if it's not for me, it really is about sticking to that list. Another tip when I'm actually in the supermarket is knowing what aisles to go down. Like, people ask me, do I take my kids shopping all the time? I said, I'd rather not. But look, I do sometimes because I do think it's an educational experience for them too. Look, they love their treat foods, etc. And we will go down those aisles and, sometimes that those foods can really add up, but I'll just offset that with, teaching them about a new vegetable or a legume or something like that. So we have a bit of a trade-off. We negotiate slightly, but I do limit taking my children as much as possible, but I do make sure it's an educational experience. But another thing is looking at the fine print. I find that sometimes looking at the cost per gram or cost per kilo. So, for instance, snacks are a huge hit in my house. So, when it comes to lunchbox and getting variety, like I said, my kids are fussy. I want to get that variety as much as possible. I'll often avoid buying single use as much as possible. So I'll buy the value pack, for instance, and you'll see that they're often cheaper per gram, and I'll just portion it out into, like, say, containers or Ziploc bags. So they're getting that variety, but I know that I'm getting more value for, by buying the value serve rather than the single use. But I mean, occasionally I'll buy the single use depending on what's on special. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things I do when I go into the supermarket. I mean, first of all, I don't just shop at the same supermarket every week. I'll usually might go into Coles and Woolies and see what they've got on special, and then go and top up with everything else at Aldi. So yeah, really not just sticking to the same place, because different foods are going to be discounted at different weeks. Similar to you, I also look at the cost per gram, and particularly when it comes to things like veggies. So, for example, you can buy pre-prepared veggies, which are in additional packaging, or you can buy them loose. And you take green beans, for example. Buying green beans loose is nearly half the price of buying them in a bag. So, little things like that can really help you save money. And buying loose carrots, etc., and potatoes instead of buying the whole the whole bag. I noticed a couple of the supermarkets doing good combos at the moment where you can buy combos of like potatoes and carrots together and you get a discount by buying them, and you can use those as the base for things like soups, etc. So yeah, that'd be one of my tips. Also having a look at things, continuing on the theme of veggies, because we are trying to, talk about how to eat healthily on a budget. Looking to those frozen veggies as well can be a really good way to save money and also help cut down on food waste. I mean, if we're being honest, not every frozen veggie is excellent, but we do have some of our favourites, which include things like, peas, corn and carrot mix. That's something you can keep in the freezer all the time and just chuck into meals, particularly if you're in a hurry one night. Curries, casseroles, etc. work really well. Another tip of mine would be the time of day you go to the supermarket. Sometimes if you go a bit later in the day, at around 8 o'clock at night onwards, you might be able to pick up some discounted meat, for example, or even, the salad bags and things like that, which need to be used. So the meats are good. You can pick up like whole chickens, etc., and then pop them in the freezer. The freezer is your friend, and use those a little bit later on. So yeah, they'd be my tips. Making sure you shop around, mix up the time of days, keep an eye out for those foods that are being discounted at the end of the day. And as Kathleen said, buying on a cost per gram basis, not just going for the prepackaged convenient option all the time.
I often find the most expensive item really are the proteins. I mean, if you want to include a lot of protein, I mean, we talk about including protein in every meal in our diet, but often proteins appear to be expensive. What are your thoughts on that, Jess?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm definitely eating a lot more vegetarian and plant-based meals at the moment, which is not only healthier, but it's also more affordable. If you think about what the most cost-effective proteins are on a per gram basis, it's going to be your legumes. So, I mean, I've always got a stock of, if you open my cupboard, there's always multiple cans of lentils and chickpeas and things like that, because they are, on a cost per gram basis, very, very affordable and can be the great, foundation for many dishes. And also you can use them to bulk out dishes. Like if you're making a spaghetti bolognese, for example, you can add in the lentils to the mince and make that meal stretch another, 1 or 2 serves further than it would have if you just used the mince alone. And again, those tips around freezing meat as well. So buying mince when it's on special and putting one in the freezer and using one during the week. So you've always got that protein on hand, not just, waiting until you need something to buy it. So having a little bit of flexibility in your meal plan can be helpful too, because you might have gone in thinking you're going to cook something with lamb, and then if you see that pork is on special, you might want to adapt your dish to, to suit what was on special that week.
Yeah, I guess that just comes back to having a little bit of constantly having a repertoire, but constantly seeking out for some inspiration of new recipes as well. Because, if you've got a couple of repertoires up your sleeve, that's great, but sometimes that can be tweaked, but knowing how to do that, because I guess culinary skills is a big obstacle for a lot of people, and, trying to kind of experiment with new things and learning how to cook different meals is really, really key in terms of getting that variety and trying different things. And, particularly ways, if you see something that's a really low cost, why not look up that certain food and come up with a few recipes that in different ways to cook that?
Yeah, that's a great idea. And for some people who may not have the time or their cooking skills, they might not have the same confidence. Potentially looking at things like meal delivery services, they can be a great way to increase your cooking skills and also cut down on food waste, because you're not buying ingredients that you're not going to use. So that could be another option for some people to consider as well.
Yeah, it's coming up with something that's custom to your lifestyle. So it might be one night of meal delivery, or you might have a week of doing that. You might experiment with that, because that's going to help with food waste. It's going to help you with new culinary behavior and skills. But it's just, again, coming back to getting some inspiration as much as possible, and knowledge is key when it comes to this, when it comes down to how can we cook certain things? How can we do it differently? Because we do get bored. But I think my biggest tip to take from this is to have that list as your foundation and that stock take. Know your essentials, like what's in your kitchen, what's in your pantry, what are the foundations of your meals, and then how you can repurpose that, cooking in bulk where possible.
And picking up those specials in bulk as well. Like if you go in and you see that, a particular, your favorite breakfast cereals on special, for example, buy 2 boxes and keep one at home, or, coffee beans, all those things that are really expensive, pick them up when they're on special so that you don't need to pay full price for them. And on that topic of food waste, we've touched on that a few times today because it is a big part of helping you save money. what about the old, best before, use by dates? I know they can cause a lot of confusion for people. What do our listeners need to look out for there?
Well, use by date is, as the name implies, you have to use it by that certain date. But I think the research is showing that you can possibly extend it a few days after, depending on how you've preserved it, if you freezed it or if you put it in the refrigerator. But best before, I think you have a little bit more leeway, because that's why, again, you don't want to end up necessarily with 5 cans of, such and such in your pantry. Having a look at the best before date, avoid chucking things out, really scrutinize what's in your pantry so you can avoid doubling up on things. But best before, I think you have a little bit of leeway there. Because that is a big cause of food waste, I think, too, cutting out. I think bread's one of the biggest one.
Yeah, bread is apparently the most thrown out food in our pantries. Just really quick tip there would be put it in the freezer.
Freezer, or I often actually just put them in the whizzer and breadcrumbs.
Turn into breadcrumbs.
Yeah, yep. and just do it for schnitzel with some tenderloins or whatever. So that's another thing that I put in the freezer. But certainly, Jess, freezer is your friend.
We love the freezer.
At Sanitarium Health Food Company, we're on a mission to make healthy eating easier. From grab-and-go brekkies to clever snack ideas and budget-friendly dinners, our plant-powered recipes have you covered. At sanitarium.com, download our free 12 before 12 cookbook. It's a fun food adventure that teaches kids skills for a healthier life. And whether you're feeding toddlers or fueling teenagers, helpful nutrition advice is just a click away. Sanitarium. Eat well, live well.
Okay, we've covered quite a bit of ground here today. I think just before we go, Kathleen, I'm still really keen to hear your $200 spend. What's actually on the list? I think our listeners would like a bit more detail here. Can you just give us a high-level breakdown on what you might include in a typical shop that coming in at $200?
Okay, family of 5. You really want to hear it?
I do.
I did the maths, and to be fair, it came out to be exactly $253. So I went over $53, okay? But
you have got 5.
Good. It's pretty good. So look, I can put this list, and it's pretty boring, but it's a typical week. Again, going back to the essentials, I'll put the list in the show notes, but it ranged from, the staples are canned tomatoes, canned lentils, chicken thighs, brown rice, bag of onions, celery, hummus. Again, there's a lot of, there's snacks in there, popcorn, muesli bars, pasta. We've got some steak, lots of Greek yogurt, bag of spinach, frozen blueberries. So again, you can see how these foundations are primarily whole grains. There's some protein, various forms of proteins, legumes, chicken, meat. Lots of veggies. We've got some snacks in there, and it's just about trying to span them over the week and just a little bit of planning and prepping. So Jess, you didn't talk about prep with your meal prep, actually. We talked about my planning, but you talk so much at work about prepping your meals. What's the key there?
Well, I guess meal prepping is great for not only helping to save time during the week. That's a big part of why I do it. But it also helps you to save money because you don't need to buy your lunch. And also when you get home, it takes that, need to go to the shops and the potential risk of buying something on impulse or, being guided by your hunger rather than the plan that you had at the beginning of the week. So, yeah, I like to do a bit of bulk cooking on the weekend. For example, last weekend I did a huge tray of roasted vegetables, and I think that was the other thing to mention was, buying those seasonal vegetables as well because they're, more affordable than things that might be out of season.
All those ugly ones.
Oh, the ugly vegetables as well. It doesn't matter what they look like once they're roasted in a pan. To cooking up in bulk or doing a big soup, for example, because that's the kind of thing that I can eat for 3 or 4 days in a row and it doesn't go off. You can keep that in the fridge. So meal prep, if you've got time, can really, be a good friend, helping you save time and helping you save money and, stick to the healthy eating plan as well.
Okay, Jess, we covered a bit of ground today. Let's just sum it up with those tips. What would be your first?
Okay, the number one tip that I think we heard a few times today was having a plan.
Absolutely, having a plan. List. I love my list.
Having a list. Number 3, I think, is shopping around and taking advantage of the specials.
4, repertoire. Have a little bit of flexibility. That goes back to the specials.
And number 5 would be minimising food waste. So, cooking in bulk, checking the pantry before you go, and repurposing leftovers.
That's it. That's it for our show today.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on week 2 of Healthy Families. We look forward to speaking to you again next week. Bye.